So let's get started. What we're going to do, the afternoon sessions are slightly different. The afternoon sessions are slightly different from the morning sessions in that we are going to have a sequence of short papers, each of them 10 minutes long, one straight after the other, which will enable us to ask questions of all the panelists, if you like, in one go. So it's less intimidating process. I just want to say that we should have great respect to the students for doing these papers. First, for two reasons. First of all, it's very difficult to speak on anything in under 10 minutes. So it's really hard. And I remember last year, they were unbelievable in terms of their timing. And the other thing, none of the students are specialists in this subject. We've asked them to go out of their comfort zone to talk about things that they don't necessarily know a huge amount about. So we have to show them great respect for that. So let's get started straight away. We're going to kick off this afternoon. We've got four papers in total. And we're going to kick off with Vithória Konzen Dill, who's a PhD candidate in the Department of Art History and Visual Studies at the University of Victoria. And she is going to give a paper entitled Before ChatGPT and DALL-E 2, Technology in Art and the Weight of the Artist's Hand. Go ahead, Vithória, and remember your microphone.
Thank you. I was about to forget that. Is it going? Okay, thank you. Hi everyone, it's a pleasure to be back. As I'm gonna jump straight in because I only have 10 minutes. As an art historian, I'm always interested in hearing about artists, how they feel about their art, how is their process, because I appreciate and I research art, but I don't make it. And so it's always fascinating for me, and it helps me understand art so much better when I hear their thoughts and their experiences on it. So I'm bringing to you today 3 case studies. I'm going to talk about 3 artists, not equal. I'm not going to dedicate the same time and for each of them. You'll probably understand why. But yeah, so I have 3 case studies of artists today that work with AI, that use technology in their art, and they use it in different ways. They have different relationships with it. There are similarities and differences in their works. But at the end of the day, what I want to show with these cases is that they all emphasize the artist's role and the human hand behind the use of this technology, and seeing how they understand their work and the tools that they use. There we go. So the first artist I want to show you is Sougwen Chung. She is a Chinese-born Canadian-raised artist, currently working in New York. She holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts and a Master's in Interactive Art. She's also a former fellow of MIT Media Lab. And one thing that I find important to understand Sougwen's work is seeing her background, that her father is an opera singer and her mother a computer programmer. So she grew up both playing the violin and also coding programs. And then in her art, first she thought of machines in terms of tools that would be able to make her work more efficient and more productive. But then, as you're going to see, she ends up thinking that maybe those machines don't need to be just tools, they also can work as non-human collaborators. She names these robots Drawing Operations Unit and then Generation 1, 2, until now she's currently on 5, and then calls them Doug. Doug 1 was pretty much, had a simple premise. It was that the artist would lead, and then the machine would follow. If she drew a line, then it would mimic her line. But then what ended up happening was that the machine made mistakes, and it would falter, it would skip a line, it would sleep, and instead of seeing that as a flaw or a mistake, the artist was forced to respond. And she ended up using the fact that the machine was interpreting her line, but not perfectly. And maybe that was the beauty of it. I should have mentioned that Chung also, she does drawing, performances, so most of these works end up being performed in front of an audience. Then we go into Doug 2, which instead of wanting an accident, she was trying to design a system that would respond to her drawings in ways that maybe she didn't expect. So what the artist ended up doing was using a visual algorithm to extract visual information from all of the 2 decades of her digital and analog drawings. So she trained this robot in order to generate recurring patterns based on her own work. So instead of just mere repetition with its own flaws, now it was generating patterns that were maybe responding to her drawings in a way that she didn't necessarily expect. And that's when she started thinking of the machines as collaborators. She says that if Doug 1 was just muscle, then Doug 2 was a brain. Until we get into Doug 3, that she calls the family. She understands that these machines are fundamentally malleable and shapeable systems, and one in which the human hand is always present. So they're not going to be the omnipotent AI that we have been told to believe. And in Doug 3, what she used these robots for was analyzing data from surveillance cameras around town and creating a landscape through these data. So can imagine surveillance cameras all over town, how much information is absorbed, people moving, cars passing by, bus, bike, all of the sounds and lights that are involved in this, and this huge amount of data was processed by her robots, by Doug 3, and she worked with it so that they could create landscapes. And her goal is exploring a mode of working with human-machine beyond mere extension and going into a feedback loop. So I'm gonna stop at Doug 3 so that I can show you other artists as well. But yes, she has continued moving on with these works. So we are at Doug 5 now. But going from this idea of AI being a malleable and shapeable system, she says that training AI systems is a lot of hard work. And so I want to tell you the work of Jake Ells. Jake Ells is a London-based artist, and they identify as neuroqueer, and also they have experience as a hacker. And when they started working with artificial intelligence, they say that the most interesting things come about when the artist and the machine collaborate. And what I'm going to say now is not their own words, it's just my interpretation of seeing them explain their work. I would say that while Chung sees Doug 3 as a family and a collaboration, Jake Ells is slightly challenging the machine and kind of testing it, because they use, there we go. These are all AI-generated faces, so they are not photographs of real people. And Jake Ells questions the existing facial recognition data sets and the bias that is in it. So the difficulty of recognizing faces that are not necessarily white and male, or even just female gender fluidity. They ended up in working with Zizi, querying the data set. That's the title of their work, by inserting faces of drag queens and kings into the set of images that are connected to the software. And so this is the result that they have achieved. These faces that are in between, sometimes not even, there are even some glitches that are part of it. And he argues that artificial intelligence is at its best when it's used as a tool to complement human creativity, and that it can teach us a lot about the working of our own brain and our society. So by working with the bias that is inserted into the machine, and maybe we can argue inserting another bias, we can understand how these systems are working with the society that we have. And their argument is that humans will always have the upper hand. So machine learning is good at processing huge amounts of cold data and making sense of it, huge amounts that humans maybe will not, but that the machine is as smart as the data that we have fed it. So it's never going to be, it does take a human to think of really, and I'm quoting them, weird and interesting and wacky ways of using these technologies. To finish it off, this artist was, I have a little bit of a closer up. Then to finish it off, Malik Afegwa is a film director, also a visual reality curator from Nigeria. This was a I'm gonna be honest, a very last minute addition to this presentation because I was telling a friend of mine about this conference, and she's a fashion designer, and she just showed me, you gotta see this. And so it was added to the presentation because among a lot of different works that he has made, this is his Elders series. These are all images generated via Midjourney, and he goes into depth about why using this tool and how he has trained it. He has a lot of issues, for example, training the algorithm to see African culture and African people in the way that expressed the image that he wanted to share. And so he talks about that use of the tool. But the idea behind this series is showing elderly people in spaces that you maybe wouldn't see. So at the beach, being fashionable, or in a runway show. And the main reason I wasn't going to go into AI image generator tools, the off-the-shelves as we've been referring. But then you see these images of elderly Black people in a runway. They are not real. They are not a photograph. These are not real people. But they ended up being a real fashion show. A fashion custom designer, Ruth Carter, was inspired by these images and ended up dedicating an entire day of the Africa Fashion Week show in 2023, an entire day to senior models. And so, as Malik says, Midjourney, the AI has been a tool for him to visualize things that he wouldn't have the resources to visualize, and maybe they help shape reality somehow. And so we now have a fashion show that had elderly Black people for a whole day. And I'm not gonna even think about all the things that I could have mentioned after hearing the talks for today. So thank you so much.